Hey folks, this is Ben from Road to VR here today checking out Defector, which is a new Twisted Pixel game coming out this year, and I'm here with the creative director Josh from Twisted Pixel, and he's going to tell us all about it. So why don't you first give us a little recap about, what is this game for people who are just learning about it?
Yeah, man, I think the way we kind of internally kind of sold it to ourselves was we want to be the ultimate spy. Look back at like GoldenEye, Nintendo 64. Not in any way that would compare things to GoldenEye, but it's like we wanted to be like a spy. So if you take Mission Impossible and mix it with Fast and the Furious, you get some crazy, crazy spy action thing, and that's what we wanted to do with it. So that's the goal, basically.
And that's seems like a pretty big departure from your first VR game, which was Wilson's Heart. What? It's kind of a whole new direction, but still feels like it has some similarities. Where did you kind of leave off with Wilson's Heart, and how did that, if at all, lead to this new project?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for Wilson being our first VR thing, it was really just trying to come to grips with touch and just VR in general. And uh, it's a totally different way to design a game as opposed to a console where you want people to focus on one thing, but they're looking this way or they're trying to grab this thing. We learned a lot from Wilson. So coming into Defector, it's more about how can we focus it a little bit more while at the same time giving you even more freedom. One of the things in the Wilson was kind of our teleport system. So now we're working with a you do whatever you want type of system. You have lots of options to kind of tweak your controls and that type of thing, and then also how to keep people more motivated to put the helmet on. We want you to have to put that helmet on and be like, why do I play this game in VR? And I think being like a badass spy doing crazy things is a good reason to do that.
And doing crazy things in VR is, doing something unique that only fits in VR is certainly a strong appeal. What do you feel like are some of the things that you're trying to let the players do that just don't make sense in other games?
Yeah, I think if you look at the trailer, if people take a look at that, we have things like driving a car out of plane, or we have you climbing up a plane. Which anything you can do any of that in a console game, but the feeling of actually doing it in VR and touching it and kind of trying to simulate there's wind in your face and you're climbing the thing, it just kind of takes it up a notch. Where it's not that it couldn't be done elsewhere, but to have the best experience, VR is kind of the way to do that.
And would you say that this is more of a gameplay-driven game, a story-driven game, or kind of where does it fall in that arc of like kind of narrative to focused gameplay?
I think both. I mean, I think the thing with Wilson was it was really about kind of your hands. Your hands were the character, and all the things you could interact with. And we were trying to kind of push a narrative. In this one, we're also trying to push a narrative. Like I always say, like quote unquote console experience in VR. Trying to do the same thing here, but with more freedom and more things to kind of interact with than what we did with Wilson. It's really just trying to kind of take it up a notch there.
What can players expect in terms of gameplay? I mean, we've seen some shooting and kind of some dialogue, but is this all? Will players develop, more skills and learn more things over time, more mechanics?
Yeah, so one of the things we're trying to do with the game is you have a number of team members, and the team members help you out, and each of them have different skills. And as you go throughout the game, it's I don't want to say one-offs, but it's really trying to make sure every time you get into a level, you're doing brand new things you didn't do in a previous level. So yeah, there's always going to be shooting and fighting, but how is that different in every level? How do we make that cooler with like new gadgets or new weapons in general that you wouldn't expect to use? So yeah, it'll just keep kind of ramping up.
And so, is the progression, if you will, in that sense, just as you go through the game, you're doing cooler and cooler stuff, or is it going to be, the kind of unlock gun, kind of upgrade your stuff sort of system?
There's some unlocks. I mean, we have an objective system where you can kind of bring up the objective list, and I always kind of call it the Tony Hawk list, where it's like you have all these things you can do, but you don't necessarily have to do them to kind of make progress in the main narrative. And looking at the kind of level select, where we haven't actually implemented this, but we're thinking about doing like a Mega Man style almost, where you're at your base and you have all these places you can go, and it's like, which one do I want to do first? So you don't have to necessarily pick a level and kind of increase. You'll just get to see the cool, crazy stuff right away.
In that sense, is that kind of after you complete the game, or is this going to be a not totally linear narrative? Like you could go start with any one of those places that you want.
Right, you can start at any place. We will have you kind of start in a prologue level that kind of teaches you how to play, and then it's kind of off and going to whatever you want to do.
Okay. And then is this the kind of game where players can expect something like boss fights, puzzles? what else is in there other than kind of like neat VR mechanics and shooting and maybe driving a car out of a plane?
Sure. Yeah. There's traditional game elements such as bosses and things like that, but really it's about, hey, I have to do this thing. And again, VR is all about your hands. Like how, even climbing a ladder in VR and doing that in a cool way, or sliding down a pole. Like, how do we make that cool? Where in another game it'd be fine. You've done it a million times, but how do you do something new in VR that feels really awesome and doesn't make you sick and get you excited? And it's a mechanic you can learn to keep doing over and over. So lots of kind of cool stuff like that is what we're aiming for.
And what's the scope of the game look like? And maybe compare it to Wilson's Heart, for people who've played the previous one. Do you have an idea of kind of pricing and kind of content scope?
So pricing wise, it's going to be kind of an Oculus thing. Later on in the year, they kind of decide what they want to do with that. For us internally, again, that quote unquote console experience, the team and I haven't really put too much of a say on, we need to make it this many hours. To us, it's just like, is it awesome to play? Is there, we don't want to make any level like, oh, these levels are good, but this one kind of sucks. It's like, no, they're all cool. And for me personally, I think that's easily going to meet or exceed what we had for Wilson. So again, it's going for bigger scope type of VR game.
Great. And speaking of Wilson's, you did mention that you have learned a lot through that process of kind of making your, the debut Oculus game. Can you give me a rough rundown of some of the things that you really took from Wilson's Heart and moved it into the development of this game in terms of just how you put it together, how you make it work for VR?
Yeah, I think the two design kind of things we took away from it are not limiting people's movement, which I think was early on you're trying to design the game to make it work for everybody. And I'm kind of taking a little more of a roller coaster approach to this one, where it's like we're giving you as many options as we can to kind of tweak your controls, but not everyone can ride the roller coaster, but you want the roller coaster to be awesome. So it's like we're doing everything we can to just make it feel awesome. Learned that from Wilson. I think the other thing too is more engagement. We had a lot of places in Wilson where, hey, the animation might have been great, the scenery was great, but you were kind of just standing there looking. And we're trying to think of new things for Defector, where it's like you're just not standing there looking, you're always engaged. So that's kind of the two big design takeaways for us.
Okay. And then for Wilson, when that came out, what did you feel about the reception? What did players like? What did players not like?
Yeah, I thought the reception was great. I think the difference coming from being a console company, that was kind of the first game we jumped into with VR, is VR just isn't as big yet. So it's kind of hard to gauge the reception in a broader sense. As far as players who did play the game, really all we heard was, I want to move around. I want to move around. And again, we designed it so anyone could play it. Now that VR is a little more mature, and I think people are getting more used to it, and as the technology kind of advances, we don't have to be so closed-minded to kind of letting people run around and do what they want to do.
Great. Well, thank you very much for the overview. We'll be looking forward to the game coming out 2018. Is there any more specific date than that?
Just this year right now, so we come in. But thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
You too. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, man.